These testimonials are representative of my or our experiences, but the exact results and experience will be unique and individual to each person. The information provided herein is not medical advice and is not intended to substitute for the advice of your personal physician or other healthcare providers. Welcome to The Beautiful Bag. This is your host, Leanne Hayden, cancer survivor, and more importantly, ostomy lifer. Each and every week, I'm going to be bringing a special guest or some inspiration for you and a few little stories along the way so that you can learn what life is like for us to be living in an ostomy and why we all think it's a beautiful bag. So listen in and let's get started.
Hello, my beautiful listeners. It's Leanne Hayden here, your host of the Beautiful Bag podcast. And before we dive into this week's episode with an amazing guest, I wanted to talk to you about a topic that many of us living with an ostomy can relate to: managing ostomy leaks. In my latest blog titled Mastering Ostomy Leaks, Tips, Tales, and Triumphs, we discuss practical tips, personal stories, and the importance of maintaining mental resilience when faced with ostomy leaks. But here's the exciting part. I've teamed up with Hollister Incorporated to create a video that talks about this. You can watch it on Hollister's YouTube channel. I will add the link to the video in the show notes as well. In the video, I also share a very personal story that happened in a restaurant where I experienced a leak. It was a humbling experience, to say the least, and I talk about practical tips on how to manage and ideally avoid ostomy leaks. Whether you're new to this journey or a seasoned ostomate, there's something here for everyone. So after you're done listening to our current episode, head on over to Hollister's YouTube channel and check it all out. All right, now let's get started with today's guest. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Beautiful Bag podcast. I am here with our girl, Carly Allen. She is from Vancouver, Canada. Carly has been on the show. She was actually one of the first people I ever interviewed. She's episode number 4. And if I can figure out why some of these episodes have disappeared, I will get it back out there. But she shared her entire story, her cancer journey on episode number 4. But we're definitely going to talk a little bit more of, recap that and what she's been doing since she is out on Instagram and social media, really sharing the journey of what life is like living in an ostomy, and she's doing an amazing job. So Carly, welcome to the show this week.
Thanks for having me, Lan. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, no, I'm so excited to have you. And I love that. And guys, just so you know, she's Ostomate and the City on Instagram, because she has this, it's the whole Sex in the City. It is what it is. It is what it is. We were just having a conversation about, and just like that. And we like season 2 better than season 1, just to let you guys know. I know you care about that, people. Anyways, Carly, let's jump into it. I know you shared your journey, a long time ago, but just, why don't we just give the listeners a refresh on, on how you ended up in your ostomy? Because it's
for sure
different.
It is a different journey. And honestly, I've not yet met anyone like me. So if anyone who hears this, who's had the same journey as me, drop me a message, because I'm looking for you. I don't know where you are. At the age of 38, I was diagnosed with stage 3 vulvar cancer. And to be honest, women, we know we have a vulva, but I was like, what type of cancer? Like, where, And I was in a lot of pain, a lot of agony. I was misdiagnosed numerous times as I was going into the hospitals looking for help, because I was in so much pain. And so by the time I actually got to a really good doctor who was like, hey, I think we're going to take a biopsy here, which that in itself was like freaky. 5 days later, I was told I had stage 3 vulvar cancer, what some might have thought was a cyst, or I didn't have an STD, but they just like start to throw these things out at you, was actually a tumor. It wasn't warts. It wasn't any of these things that people, when they quickly looked at me in an emergency room, when I went in there, not even hardly being able to stand, they dismissed things. Mm-hmm. So as soon as that happened, I was rushed in, got scans. They had to mark me for radiation with, the little tattoos that anyone who's had radiation knows about, for the lasers to line up for that. And I underwent chemotherapy once a week and radiation 5 days a week, for how many weeks? I guess 8 weeks. And then the tumor shrank along the way, but it wasn't gone. So then I have to have surgery, and it's a surgery called a radical vulvectomy. So basically they removed some of my vulva, but not all of my vulva. And then that had to heal. And that in itself was a challenge because I had like a gaping wound or hole, whatever you want to call it. So I underwent hyperbaric therapy for 8 weeks. And as I was like healing through all this, my poor body had just been through so much, and my sphincter from all that radiation pretty much didn't work. So I was soiling myself on the regular. They found out a little bit, when they were, testing tissue and stuff throughout, that I had mild Crohn's disease as well, which was new to me, but kind of made sense because I'd kind of struggled with sensitivities throughout my life. And 2.5 years after that, my cancer recurred, and I had to do a really big surgery called pelvic exenteration. And that surgery was one that you don't even know if you're going to wake up from. It's a very, very hard surgery to go through. And I was marked for my colostomy, which I was told would be permanent, because in order to rid the cancer, they had to get better margins this time around, which we didn't have the first time. Because had we done it the first time, I for sure would have had the colostomy bag. And anyone who has an ostomy always, is like, let's try to avoid it if possible, which is what we did in round one. So in round two, I love how I'm like, round one, round two.
Right?
Round two, the colostomy came about. I had a complete hysterectomy, although after 40 pelvic radiations, nothing worked anyway. So, but they just wanted to make sure there was nowhere for that cancer to spread for a third time internally. They removed my rectum. They removed my vulva, and they used skin from my stomach to create a skin flap for what we refer to in the community as a Barbie butt, because Barbie doesn't have a hole if you look at a Barbie doll. And then they also rebuilt what was left of my vulva with amazing plastic surgeon that came in and did that. So that all in itself took about 8.5 hours.
That is crazy. And this was how long ago? So your first surgery was in
2014.
2014, and then the second surgery was
2018.
2018. Okay, so this
So
is
I had symptoms again in 2017. And I remember it was the summer of 2017, and my symptoms initially were that I felt like I was sitting on a rock or a pebble, and then it became bigger, it felt like a marble, and then after that it became like a golf ball. So I was kind of lucky that I had pain, because it alerted me. A lot of cancers below the belt, you don't have any sort of pain, and oftentimes it's too late to save your life because this cancer is so advanced. So for me, the pain was a blessing. But I remember going into the cancer agency saying, like, I'm feeling that same pain. And the doctor's like, no, you're fine. And I was like, I'm telling you, I'm not. And come December, it was confirmed that it was back and that I would have to have that surgery, which happened 3 months later.
right. Yeah, and for them to get the margins, I mean, we don't have similar stories of where your cancer was, but mine was in the pelvis floor. Mine had grown out of the pelvis floor. So in my case, they just, in first surgery, they said, that's it. We have to take enough margins, and to take those margins, it's taking the rectal muscles with it. So there was no option, of having a maybe not kind of scenario. So I get that. So how did you feel when you first woke up from having that surgery and knowing that you're in a colostomy bag? I mean,
yeah, I think for me, going into the surgery, because even though my vulva was theoretically functioning going into this surgery, I knew it wasn't going to function coming out of it the way that I needed it, or that a natural woman's vulva would function. My intercourse levels would not exist. My intimacy was about to change. And so for me, the ostomy bag was almost the easiest thing to accept. Okay. Because it was something that I could handle. It was something that I saw there was a community out there of people who were living their lives, didn't mean there weren't challenges, but that they could manage just fine. And so I accepted it pretty easily. But now, 5 and a bit years later, looking back, I think it was just a way that I was protecting myself, because I was so scared of the other stuff.
Mhm.
And so it was just easier for me to talk about my colostomy than it was everything else. And so my challenge for myself moving forward this year is to advocate more and like to talk about my vulva issues a little differently. Because I think that I've done a really good job advocating for ostomy awareness. But sometimes we forget that we all have different reasons as to why we get an ostomy, be it a urostomy, a colostomy, an ileostomy, or internal pouch, whatever the case. And oftentimes it's easier to forget about those reasons and just talk about, the after effects.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, this is a space. So if
Right.
the conversation goes there and you feel comfortable with it, know that it's an open space and you can share it here. But I'll let you decide that. I'll let you decide that. So yeah. So now, all right. So we have the surgery, you're in your ostomy. I know you, my friend, are out there just living it up. You're always dancing on social media, showing people what to wear. You're really good at sharing products and giving advice and helping. What brought that on for you to go out like that on social media?
Yeah. So as much as I knew that there was a community out there, this is obviously years ago now versus today's advocating online on any platform is a lot better than it once was. So as much as I knew there was community, I also still felt alone because I didn't know anybody really around me who had an ostomy. And so when I would go online and just look up the hashtag ostomy bag, for example, or colostomy, whatever the word I was looking for, I found some people. But what I did find oftentimes was just like an image of somebody posing. And I loved that they were showing it because showing it is half the battle. But I was like, well, how did she or he get to that point where they could show it and they weren't having skin issues or they weren't having leaks? Or how did they figure out what brand to wear? Like all those whys kind of popped up in my head. And, I was in the hospital for almost 4 weeks post-surgery, and I was told a few things, but not enough. So then when I did come home, I was still under care by nurses for a couple of months. I was still using walking aids. So it wasn't like I could just like go to the pharmacy and be like, hey, like, can you help me out? So I didn't find the answers that I necessarily was looking for. So as I did find those answers, I started to think I'm going to tell other people about what I found. And so that's when I would be like, this is one of my favorite things. I started doing these videos called Favorite Things because it was working for me. And I thought, if it works for me, it's going to help somebody else. And people just kind of caught on to it. And Ostomy in the City just kind of started to grow from there.
I still love it's ostomy in the city.
And some people say ostomate, some people say ostomate, some people say ostomate. There's no wrong way to say it,
Nope.
but I just thought like this is my life. My life is obviously about having an ostomy, but it's about how I got here. And just like the show Sex in the City, it's about those women's lives and how they got to where they were. And so that's kind of how I came with my favorite show. And back in the day I had it on DVD, like it was my jam. So that's kind of how I created the name.
I love it. I do love it. And I mean, as everybody knows, lived in New York for 3 years. We're back in New Hampshire now, and I miss the city big time. But
Yeah.
so why don't we talk about, you've done a lot, not just, showcasing out on social media and really being an advocate. You've done a lot. And we were just talking, you said you just went to Healthy Voices in New Jersey for a conference for advocacy stuff too. So you've done a lot of things. Why don't we talk about I want to hear about those things, like the things that you've done and how you found, because I get the question a lot, and this may help, how you found the ability to advocate and how you chose the arena to advocate through. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
Okay.
For me, I'm an Instagrammer. Like it's just I love the way that when people see your post, be it a carousel or a reel or whatever, you can write a nice blurb below it. Whereas on other social channels, it's more just like people swiping through and, it's not as much of like a family. And I needed therapy. And I was like, I went to a couple therapists and they weren't that great. So I was like, I'm going to find my therapy online with like-minded people, right? So I basically just wanted to join community and create community. And so in the process of that, I got on Google and I Googled, my city being Vancouver. I'm like, Vancouver Ostomy Support Group. And when that happened, I found, oh, we have a local chapter here in Vancouver. Oh, Canada. Oh, there's an Ostomy Canada website. And I just kind of found things that way. Yet, unfortunately, no nurse in the hospital said like, hey, these things exist, right? They didn't tell me that there was a visitor program in my city where I could have been asked if I wanted to meet an ostomate in the hospital who would have been a volunteer to come meet me. And that would have been a tremendous thing to do. So the more I found out about these things, I was like, well, I need to be that person for the next me, right? Mm-hmm. For the next person in the hospital. And so I joined up the chapter, just started going to meetings, and then I found out they needed more volunteers. So then I volunteered as the secretary. And so I take notes at our meetings and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And we have different ages, different root causes, different types of ostomies, and it's just kind of nice. And so I just felt like I needed more of that for myself and for others. But first more for myself. It's free therapy. And I'm talking to someone who gets it is just priceless, right? And so being around people like me was just what I needed to do. And along the years, as things grew, I found out about this conference called Healthy, spelled with an E, Voices. And it's a conference by Johnson & Johnson. And they put this conference on once a year. People apply. You're advocating for whatever your platform is. It could be schizophrenia, lupus, HIV, AIDS, rheumatoid arthritis, ostomy, cancer. The list goes on. And they bring all these advocates who are online advocating into one room. It's a weekend. We have all these different sessions. And you just listen to inspirational stories. You bounce off ideas from each other. The learnings are just invaluable. And this year we had a Dr. Sokolis, I think I'm pronouncing it right, and she is out of the New York area, speak. And it was probably the first time I ever felt like represented, because she was talking about gynecological cancers, and she media was on stage leading the conversation. And I got really emotional because I've never really felt like my cancer, not that it didn't matter, but that it wasn't even heard of. Like anybody I met this weekend was like, what kind of cancer? And it could be a buzzkill. Let's be real. Like nobody wants to talk about vulvar cancer, you know?
No,
it's awkward.
You've done so, you really do. You touch my heart every time I talk to you, because you have done so well at showcasing and sharing yourself so vulnerably out there in something that is so difficult. We're women, right? And it's something that's so personal, and you share it. And I'm sorry, I'm tearing up. I'm sorry, I'm making you tear.
I'm just trying not
to. So I'll stop. But you have done so well at doing that. And I commend you. I really do, Carly, because you had said it. Maybe you were so easy on talking about your ostomy because the other part was harder.
Mm-hmm. And it really was. I mean, people who've had rectal cancer, same kind of thing, like talking about rectal cancer, like you, even though nobody's shaming you, you feel shame. And at the conference this weekend, there was this breakout session that we were all in, and it was like basically talking about not having to hide and not being ashamed, right? And that's just like a quick version of what we went through. And I just had an aha moment, and like I was in tears, and I was talking with some of the people from Johnson & Johnson, and they were in tears, and like, I need to do more. They're like, you are doing it. And I appreciate you just saying that. But I sometimes feel like I'm not. Like I feel like I hide behind the bag, right? Because it's so much easier. I can't take a photo of my cancer and represent it. You know, I can't cover my hand. I mean, I guess I could do a cute little, my hands covering my cooch or something. I don't know how I would do that photo, but I guess there would be a way to do it. But it's just like invisible illness, you know, like when you can't get a photo to capture your pain and your agony. It's a hard thing to feel, right? And so when that doctor came up and we got a picture together later, she wants to have me for an interview in the future. I was just like, thank you so much for talking about these things in a room full of people who were all there for different reasons, right? So I'm just trying to push on because it helps me emotionally. And again, it's going to help the next me, whoever that person is, right?
There is somebody else out there. You're definitely not the only one. They just need to find you, and they just need to hear you. And even if you don't find someone who's exactly like you, Carly, you're making such a huge impact in this world. You really are making such a huge impact in this world.
There is a really great Instagram page for vulvar cancer awareness out there. And I recently, tagged my cause, and I think they have over 10,000 tags already. So like it's out there. But it's just not like out there. You know
It's
what I
just
mean?
not talked about. It's
Yeah,
not talked about. And again, maybe you're the one who starts that. Maybe you're the one who starts talking about that, because somebody needed to start, right? Like us and our ostomies. And now we can go out to any social media platform, search ostomy, and find so much more than when we had ours in the beginning. I mean, you were 2014, 2018, you said was your first surgery, but your ostomy surgery was 2018. And I was 2016 when I got mine. And even just that was, there weren't many people,
no.
there goes my Boston accent. We speak well. There weren't many people ahead of us that talked about it. When you looked at it, it was just all these older people, and not that there's anything wrong with that. It was just a demographic. We didn't find people like us.
Totally.
And now you go and look, and I'm like, whoa, I'm an older person in this room. Like, look at all
Right.
of these young people that are out there sharing their lives and their journeys and having children and babies and doing all of these
things.
young things, all of these things that you do when you're young. And
Yeah,
and they're sharing it and they're being open about it, but somebody needed to start.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
you can be the person to start. And yeah, you're right. It's like, how do you show? You can't really showcase that. It's same with me. Like mine was a Nerf football in my pelvis floor. Was the size of it. I can't, my scar's right above my C-section scar. I'd be doing the same thing. It's like, how low can it go? Right.
How low can you go? Yeah.
Right? How low can you go? Right. So, but I have a picture of the tumor, but I'm not putting that out there. Right.
Oh,
Nobody wants to see that
yeah.
big ugly blob. But, but again, there are ways. And I think that you're going to figure out the way you want to bring it out there. And you're going to bring so much more awareness around this. I think you'll be the person to start that trend.
Yeah,
people.
we'll see.
We'll see.
Or I'll follow the person that I find that I didn't know was already starting it. Like, just have to find those people, right?
Yep. You got to find your people. Like you said, you went to the meetings for ostomy, for the ostomy world, to find your people and for your therapy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us need that.
For sure. And I think we need to remember like how far medical appliances in the ostomy world have come. Like there's a member of our community here in Vancouver who's had his ostomy, I think it's like 67 years or something. And he's a young 70-ish man. I can't remember exactly how old he is, but he's not, he's doing good. And the way he experienced ostomy life 60 plus years ago versus to today is night and day. So like I tip my hat to the warriors ahead of us who had to wear appliances that were, I mean, if you Google the pictures of what an ostomy bag was 60 years ago, it's just crazy, right? Yeah. So to see, and like the companies that are working on these medical advances as well, like I applaud them, because the reason we're seeing people, younger ages or just people in general advocating is because they don't feel as ashamed and they feel more represented and that they have the right tools to live a better life.
Exactly.
That's pretty great.
Exactly. I mean, you look at it, I mean, the bags never stuck. There was always skin issues. It was clear. So you always saw your stoma from the bag, like through the bag. And for those of you who don't know what a stoma is, because we do have listeners who just are interested in this, the stoma is the opening of your intestine that comes out, that they cut a hole in your stomach, they pull your intestine through, and then they fold it almost like a sock on the outside. And that opening is called a stoma. And then the ostomy is everything else around it. So, but the bags now, it's like they're covered. You don't see all that stuff. You can look better. You're right. It's a better representation, and the manufacturers have done an amazing job.
Yeah. Like I remember in the very beginning, I was like, okay, I had my aunt who's a seamstress and we made ostomy bag covers. We found a pattern on YouTube because I just thought I'd have to cover it. But over time, I realized, hey, like this thing actually looks better without a cover, at least in my opinion. I know some people love a good, cute cover. There's nothing wrong with that. But I was like, to me, a cover brings more attention than the pouch or bag, whichever you prefer to call it, on your skin. And it was just more of another step for me to do in my daily routine. Because with my colostomy, I don't empty. I just change it. I take it off when it's full and buy a new one. So it was just like all these things, but I didn't do that in the beginning. Right. In the beginning, I was emptying and I had skin issues to the point that I couldn't bend forward. Right. And so that was, again, so with my platform, I was like, well, I want to stand proud, but like, how do I get there? Like my skin is so raw right now that I can't even sit down. Right. And so that stuff is a journey, like getting the right fit, figuring out your skin health. Like it doesn't happen overnight, and I mean, a stoma looks different for everybody, right? The stoma you see on Google is not necessarily the stoma you're going to get. Not in my case, and I have a revision coming actually. So yeah.
You do?
I do. Yeah.
Oh,
I've had a flat inward retracting stoma since day one, which is hard to manage because no matter what you do, when your stomach retracts inward, you get that divot. And so all the stool like sits there and when it pushes back out, if you don't match the cut of your pouch properly, it'll push underneath versus through the exit hole. And then it just goes out from.
Yeah, then it leaks. Do you do a convex bag?
I used to be in a deep convex when I was heavier. And now I'm in a soft convexity, but always a one piece, because a two piece, when I would retract, the pouch wouldn't go, or the base plate or flange, whatever you prefer to call it, wouldn't go with me. It would just stay there. And so whereas a one piece profile would go with me.
Okay. And that's, I mean, see, this is the stuff we need to talk about, right? These are the things that we don't talk about. I change my flange every 3 or 4 days. Whereas some people with your skin need it to last like a week because you don't want to be, they don't want to take it off. And again, it's the cut, the fit. And like you just said, I mean, getting the stool, if the stool gets underneath and goes under there, like once in a while, I'll be like, I smell something. And I usually, everybody's like, in the beginning, I thought I'm going to smell all the time. Now once in a while, I'm like, I smell something, which means there's stool, not in the bag, because I've changed the bag. There's stool that got under the flange that's actually sitting on my skin.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm smelling.
Yeah.
So that's when I'm like, okay, adhesive remover spray, which I never even knew about up until a couple of months ago. I would just rip that bandage right off my skin and apply a new one. Now it's like, oh, here's some nice adhesive remover spray that you just spray and the thing falls off instead of ripping off your skin.
Yeah. And you're not alone on that. I have talked to hundreds and hundreds of people over the years who didn't have adhesive remover of any kind, be it a wipe or a spray. And I said, listen, get a spray. It's going to change your life. It's just going to lift things for you. And then they write back, they're like, game changer. And I was like, right? Like,
Game
it's
changer.
amazing.
Game changer. And you can even get it on Amazon. I get mine on Amazon. It's just as cheap. And it's
anywhere you need it.
From Hollister.
Yeah. Like
it's my Hollister brand and I get it there because it's cheaper.
Yeah. And generally speaking, whatever brand somebody wears, the accessories of that same company match up best with their adhesives and stuff, right? So I've tried different brands with different things just to see, because I like to test stuff out, and didn't necessarily give me the results I needed, because they're literally tested together in their factories when they're being made, that this spray goes well with this and that and the other. So I kind of tell people, if you can stick to the same brand of what pouch you're wearing, it's not a bad idea. It doesn't mean that the others won't work, but it's a good idea because you know that they're compatible, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. What other tips would you give our listeners? What are some of the important things you think people should know?
Like as a new ostomy?
And even some lessons that some people who have had their ostomies that might not even know that they didn't know. So
I think always carrying supplies with you. It doesn't matter if you're a man, maybe you don't have, I don't know if you have a man bag, or if you have like a briefcase or in your car, whatever the case may be, or if you're somebody who uses a purse. My colostomy is generally pretty low activity wise, like output, but when it comes and it fills up pretty much right away. So if I need to, and I do a complete change, I don't just take off the pouch. Like I do a one piece, I spray it and I throw out the pouch as is. I don't empty, and then I cleanse my skin and I reapply a pouch. So if I ever go on like a walk, because I love to walk, I always make sure that I bring that supplies with me, because that one time you don't bring those supplies, you're in the middle of wherever you are, a mall, a friend's house, in your car, wherever, and you need those supplies to do a quick change or quick fix, right?
Mhm.
So I always say, bring those supplies, bring those supplies. Yesterday actually was the first time that I did bag changes on a plane. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I haven't done that yet.
Right. I've flown, I don't know how many times in the last 5 years, which I guess is another thing we could talk about going through security. But
Mhm.
I just started cramping up because I also have a hernia under my stoma, a peristoma hernia. And so I cramp a lot, and boom, the bag's filling up as we're like getting down the runway. And I was like, of course, I've been sitting in the airport for 3 hours, but now you're going to fill up. Right.
Mhm.
So as soon as the ability for me to get out of my seat came on, I went into that small little loo. I'm going to do a reel about it, and did a full change in that bathroom for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I have not yet heard that one. I have not
Yeah.
yet heard of anybody doing a bag change on a plane yet. I mean, maybe you're out there, maybe you have. I haven't. I have had when I thought I have had because of the altitude and coming down, and I don't know whether it was something I ate or whatever, because usually mine's a colostomy, usually it's solid. Well, this wasn't so solid. And when it was a rough, turbulent flight. So, and I was going and going and going and going. And so when I got off the plane and went into the bathroom, my bag was full and I had stool underneath the flange
Yeah.
because it had been pressured like against my pants, and I couldn't really do anything. And I was trying to
Yeah.
cover it up because I'm like, I can smell this. And this kid behind me said, I heard him say to his mom, what is that smell? And I'm sitting there going, I know it's me. Like, I know it's me. There's
Yeah.
no question. And but just getting off the plane straight, my husband's like, what's up? I go straight to the bathroom. See you later. I'll be out in a minute. Left my favorite
Yeah.
sweater in the bathroom, but that's
Oh,
another
geez.
story. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, it's flying can be. I fly everywhere. I've flown across the world and back, and that was the only time I ever had an issue. It was the only time I had an issue in that almost 8 years that I've had my bag. So, and going through security. So what have you found going through security and flying?
Yeah, so in general, I've always been fine. Sometimes, like, they don't do any testing. Other times, they do more testing than the last time. Just at Newark Airport yesterday, before I got in the full body scanner, because you know it's going to detect an ostomy.
Mhm.
I said, "Hey, I've got an ostomy bag. You're going to see it when you do this body scan." And so I always expect them that they're going to swab my hands. They make you like rub your hands over the colostomy bag or ileostomy bag, whichever you have. And then they swab your hands and all that. And they just said, okay, thanks. And like sent me on my way. I was like, okay, weird. And when it comes to putting supplies through the security checkpoints, the only time I've ever really had my ostomy supplies checked was in the earlier days when I was emptying my pouch. So I went to Mexico, first trip I ever did after my surgery, and I've had nascent odor eliminator. I had adapt lubricant, like, all the things that you need kind of to make sure your stool gets down your pouch and the odor and stuff. So because those are larger liquids, they were flagged and they did check them out. But medical supplies, you're allowed to bring those things. So it was fine to take them. But it was like nerve-wracking, like you're in there and they're like, pulling out ostomy bags and looking at these things in front of all these people. And that was my first time flying. Like, let's not just go an hour away. Let's go to Mexico. Like, let's
Let's get
go.
out of here.
I'm like still like healing and I'm like, oh, I'm fine. Like, again, just trying to pretend like I'm fine sometimes when I'm not. And that is what they check. But since then I've learned I don't use those things anymore, so I don't get flagged. But like just your general adhesive remover spray, it's not going to get flagged. Your ostomy pouches itself are not going to get flagged. And if they do, it's really not a big deal. But I always carry all my supplies with me in a carry-on, even if my carry-on is just my computer and my medical supplies, because if that check bag, unless I'm really good and I can travel with a carry-on only, if that check bag gets lost and your medical supplies are in there, that can be a tricky situation to get supplies wherever you're going. So I always tell people, like, take them with you in your carry-on if you can. And medical supplies theoretically do qualify for their own carry-on bag as well, but I don't need another thing to carry, so I just put them in my carry-on.
Right. And we have that cute bag that we got from April Wilson, all my ostomy crap.
That is a cute
That
one.
thing holds a ton of stuff.
It does.
It
I
does. I
just
even put
used
all my
it.
makeup in there.
Oh, do you? Yeah.
I do. It
That's
even carries all my
awesome.
makeup.
Yeah. I just used that 2 trips ago when I went away, when I went to see my friend in Alberta. And I think I had like 15 pouches in there, and I had my spray and all these things. Yeah, she designed a good one for sure.
Yeah, she really did.
Yeah, and
She
that
made
reel that I did showing that has done really well. So I
Yeah,
hope a lot of people see that kit. Yeah.
I hope so too. The only time I ever had a problem with security was I went to Honduras on a mission trip just this past April. They took on the way back, the Honduras security took I had my surgical scissors, the short
Mm,
surgical scissors, and they took my scissors.
yeah.
And I already had a couple of pre-cut flanges in my bag, so I wasn't too concerned with it. But I think that
Yeah.
if that would have happened again and I didn't have anything cut, I would ask them, can I at least cut a couple of my flanges so that I'm
Yeah.
sure I'm okay
Yeah.
to get to the other spot.
For
And
sure.
like you said about losing your supplies, I went on a trip to Florida, gosh, 4 or 5 years ago. And I got off the plane in Florida. We're getting ready to go on a cruise ship. And I got off the plane and went, I packed nothing. I packed no supplies except I had one bag. I had one bag and one flange in my purse. That is just I have this to carry with me.
Yeah.
And we were going on a 4-night cruise or something like that, 4-day cruise. And we were leaving the next morning. So I had to I called Amazon. I went on Amazon. Amazon overnighted to the hotel supplies,
Mhm.
bags that I
Yeah.
could have. And they showed up just in time before we left.
That's so good.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's a scary thing. But what else I was told is that you can go to a hospital and let them know your scenario, your situation. And they typically have some sort of supplies for you to give you
Yeah.
a little bit of a couple of things.
It'll get you through.
Yeah, to get you through the couple of days that you need to get through. But
Yeah.
I got scared. But you know what's crazy?
Very.
I was away for 4 days and I only used the bag that I had on and the other one that I brought. I never even had to touch the supplies that I had overnighted.
Yeah. But the anxiety of thinking, what if, right?
Yeah.
And that's like me, on this flight, I actually ended up doing 2 changes. And then when I got off the plane, I could smell, like you described, a little something, and I had a leak. So
Mhm.
sometimes it's like you're used to getting nothing, and then there's that one day where you just get it all happening at once, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of companies out there, obviously Amazon, but if you Google like ostomy supply companies in whatever country you're in, sometimes you can find stuff. I mean, in Canada, I work for a company called Inner Good. We're in Canada and the US, but like there's Edge Park, there's this, like there's other companies out there, and you could get stuff quickly. But man, if you don't have to go through that, like why bother? Like
Yeah.
bring enough. Like I always do, if I average 2 pouches a day, which generally I average 1, but if I average 2 pouches, then I'll bring 4. That's kind of the way that I do it, just in case. Just in case, because when I get down to 3, I'm like, oh geez, what if?
Yeah. I double up, and I double up myself. I double up. When I went to Italy, I ended up staying in Italy for 26 days and I was only supposed to go for 10. But I had tripled up, and I had put one in the check bag. I had put one in my carry-on. I had some in my purse. Like I had bags everywhere in case of any scenario. And I had packed so much that I even came home. I mean, I came home with half the supplies still, but I'm like, well, I'll go through supplies so that I can bring wine home or whatever.
Well, if we can pack too many pairs of shoes, we can pack too many ostomy pouches, but
Exactly.
it's not anything to worry about. And I think another little tip that I have that just came to mind with these stories is like as much as I don't empty my pouch, I wear a drainable as if it was a closed. I just like the convexity and the way that I can cut the back of it. So if somebody does need to empty in a pinch, you can still empty in a pinch, or you can toss it away full, whichever one, right? And they have a little bit different way if people get gassy issues to let out gas that way too. But so that's another little tip that I got there for you.
That's a good thing. I never heard of. So I like and that's a great tip. I use a 2-piece. So I have a flat flange and then I have the Hollister 2-piece. So I'm literally just taking it out. And I said, it's almost like I'm throwing it in a little doggy poop bag, taking it out, throwing it in the trash. Right. So I use their 2-piece mini, which is still this big. I'm like, you can still, like, for me, you can still go up to here. Like there's not a whole lot coming.
Yeah,
happening.
exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And it's just so great to have all these options, you know, whereas somebody with a stoma like mine, a flat fit is just not compatible with my profile.
Yep.
If I was not to have any convexity, it would just all pull up at the top by the stoma. So I need some sort of convexity for sure. And the nice thing too about what I do with my 1-piece daily change is my skin is so healthy because again, with my stoma issues, I'm not leaving something on there for so many days that infection can happen because I'm just taking it off and stopping all that. If I had a better stoma, like sounds like you have a better stoma than me, you know, I see some people showing their stomas. I'm like, I'm so stoma jealous. Like that is a pretty stoma.
My stoma is legit that big. He's like,
wow,
I call him a he because I'm like, he's sticking out 2 inches. Like I got a couple of inches. I mean,
wow.
It's Ivan. I mean, he will shrink down to about 1 inch, but he can get up to 2 inches. And sometimes I'm like, I have to get an extra size pair of pants than I normally wear because of my stoma sometimes. I had to remind myself that like, this isn't all about you and how you look, Leanne. This is to make sure your clothes are comfortable.
That's
right?
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that when I get my stoma revision, it'll be just like yours.
Good. I hope so too. I won't tell you what I call them, but
yeah, I mean, everybody names their stoma something, right?
Yeah.
And for me, like, I didn't realize why people name their stoma just because in the beginning for me, it was like code, right? So if I was with my friends and family who have always been so supportive of me, but I really didn't want to say at a restaurant or somebody's housewarming or wherever I was, like, I'm going to go deal with my ostomy bag. So I had like a naming contest. And again, another coping mechanism going into surgery for me. And I said, hey guys, like, what should I name my stoma? Or my ostomy bag, I think I might have even said, because stoma, nobody would really know what that was at the time. And so I had all these suggestions, and my cousin said Winnie the Pooh, but instead of like Winnie the Pooh with an H, now you're Winnie the Pooh O, right? So like poo bag, right? And so if I'm ever out somewhere that's kind of an awkward situation that I don't really want people to know what's up, I just say, hey guys, I'll be back. I got to go deal with Winnie. Yeah. And then off I go.
Yep. I call mine Ivan. I named him after my doctor's name was Ivaturi. And so I'm just like, it's just Ivan.
Homage to Dr. Ivan. I love that.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a terrific chat, and I could go on and on. I know we could go on and on and on, and share so much more. So we should probably do this again and again.
Anytime.
For sure. If there was, let's do this. And it's my question I ask everybody. If there was one thing that we haven't already talked about, if there was one thing that you think our listeners should know, what is that one thing?
I mean, we all have different medical histories, but let's just say, theoretically, this is saving your life. Just know it's going to be okay. You know, it's okay to be different. Sometimes our differences make us a better version of who we are, right? I would never have thought I would have said this in 2014, let alone 2018, being the proud owner of a Ostomy bag. But honestly, it has given me a different way of looking at the world, different way of looking at people. So it's okay to look at yourself differently, and acceptance is key. The quicker you can accept yourself, the quicker others will accept you right back.
And that is a perfect way to end this week's episode. Carly, thank you again so much for being here with us.
I adore you and your work that you're doing. Thanks, Leanne.
Same, friend. Same. Always. Always, always.
Thank you so much for joining us this week. If you enjoyed this podcast, get the behind the scenes at leannehayden.com/ostomy updates. And also, if you found this episode encouraging, please screenshot it and share it on Instagram. And don't forget to tag me and also the person who was on the episode with me. I occasionally will do special gifts for anyone who does do a screenshot and share it on Instagram or in your stories. Also, lastly, please go to Apple or Google, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast to keep up with them every single week. I enjoy you guys. Thank you so much for being here.